back to Critical Flick. Today I'm reviewing JUNG E, now streaming on Netflix. So JUNG E is a new South Korean sci-fi film, and it's directed by Yoon Sang-ho, who's done phenomenal films like Train to Busan, so I was really excited to check this one out. And while this may not be his strongest film, I do like that it tries to dive into the ethical and moral impacts of using human brain data to create an AI, specifically a combat AI. Basically, the premise of this movie is that it takes place in almost like a cyberpunk future where you have a battle between two rival factions, and this company is trying to create a combat AI that is using the brain data of a legendary mercenary, and the lead scientist of this group is the daughter of that mercenary, of this woman. So because of that, the movie does have some emotional weight, and I do think some of the performances are pretty solid, particularly when we get into the third act of the movie. But I think the thing that this movie really hangs its hat on are the visuals. It has really good computer generated effects. It also has pretty good solid practical sets, and I was surprised to see how good this movie looked. When I saw it pop on Netflix, I hadn't really heard a lot about it, but I do think the overall kind of cyberpunk robot warrior aesthetic of everything going on looked really good, particularly in the third act of the movie. There's a lot of big sci-fi action like you kind of want from a movie like this. But I'm always a sucker for movies that dive into the idea of transplanting a human brain into a robot, into an AI. One of my favorite movies of all time is Ex Machina, and I think that movie is probably the real cornerstone of creating a really good movie that dives into these themes. This movie tries to go there. I don't feel like it really fully gets there throughout the runtime. It does kind of hint at it, but it stays pretty surface level when it comes to those themes. There are some moments in particular dealing with like the founder of the company where he's speaking about how difficult it is to recreate humanity and how hollow that can be. One of the ideas that I really like that it explored into is the idea of the commercialization of human data, of our minds, and kind of capitalize on our thoughts and use that as kind of a monetization factor. Because there's a moment with one of our main characters where they have to make a decision about what they're going to do after they pass. How are they going to transport their brain into another body? And they give these kind of options of how you can choose. If you're really rich and wealthy, you can do option A, where you keep all your human rights and you basically kind of transfer into another humanity in a way. But then option B and C, you kind of give up those rights and you relinquish your data to a company. And that's just a really interesting concept, because I feel like we're constantly talking about oversharing and the loss of our privacy, and that's the ultimate loss of it. You're giving up basically your conscience to a corporation in order to get this free product. So I think it was interesting that they dove into that. And the movie does kind of talk in a way about how wartime companies that make their money off of conflicts have to pivot, and they have to use kind of different tactics to use their products to the more commercial space, to individuals instead of to governments or wartime groups. So I like that it dove into that a little bit, but it could have definitely hit harder. There's only really one or two scenes that really dive into that aspect. Kang Soo-yoon, who plays the main character of this film, kind of the lead scientist, I think she gives the best performance in the movie, because she has to play someone who's really struggling with the idea of using her mother's likeness and her mother's memory to create this kind of war machine in a way, and her struggle to come to grips with that and kind of what it means for her as she's dealing with her own personal struggles. I do think that people who are interested in like sci-fi action and some of these big picture themes will enjoy this movie, but if you're looking for something that's more of a deep dive into the moral and like ethical aspects of this idea, it may not be the perfect film for you, but I do think it makes up for it, like I said, because of those visual effects. You can tell the budget was used really well in this movie. It's very entertaining, particularly in the beginning and end of the film. Overall, if I were to rate this movie, I would give it a solid 7 out of 10. I personally really enjoyed it, not knowing anything about going into it. It's not the strongest from this director, and I could have obviously seen a little more depth involved with the story writing, but I think the visual effects make up for it. I think it hits hard enough. It can hit harder, but maybe kind of keeping it more surface level is better for more general audiences. If you end up checking out JUNG E on Netflix, let me know what you thought about it. Did you like it as much as me? Did you like it a little bit less? I always love to hear your opinions. Leave the comments down below, and see you guys next time.